In the Samanid Recreation Park in Bukhara, Uzbekistan, stands this beautiful and quite isolated monument. Its perfect cubic shape, adorned with one large dome and four smaller ones, conveys an almost immaculate sense of serenity. And its masonry we can call a true gift for the eye. The tomb dates back to the early 10th century CE, the Common Era. This is the oldest mausoleum of such shape surviving in Central Asia. Its perfection, however, gives researchers reason to believe that it is not the first of such tombs. Historians think that this building is based on the last resting places of the Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad during the golden age of this city in Iraq. This, however, cannot be ascertained, since almost every monument of Abbasid Baghdad had been destroyed by the Mongols in the fateful year of 1258. One thing we do know, however, and it is that such a beautiful monument must have been meant for someone of great significance, and indeed so. According to the local inhabitants, the mausoleum belonged to a certain Ismail Samani. Now, it has been proven that it is rather a family tomb containing space for 3 monarchs. Among these 3 men was still probably the previously mentioned Ismail Samani. Now, who is this Ismail Samani, whom the people of Bukhara deemed worthy to be the sole proprietor of this final resting place? Well, Ismail Samani is considered the founder of the Samanid Empire. The Samanid dynasty ruled from the 9th century to 999 of the Common Era over large parts of Central Asia. Controlling the Silk Road and having a government that protected its traders and craftsmen, the state became immensely rich. The Samanid family was of Iranian nobility and had a lineage that traced back all the way to Parthian times, so to antiquity. And they consequently became one of the first rulers in the Islamic world who were of Persian stock. Thus, they heralded what we call the Persian Renaissance, or the Iranian Intermezzo, a period during which the faltering Abbasid Caliphate in Central Asia and Iran was supplanted by strong and rich realms ruled by ethnical Persians. The Samanids considered a certain Saman Khoda as the founder of their dynasty, and this man entered service with the Umayyad governor of Khorasan in the early 8th century. Now, this is a typical example of how the caliphs employed local Iranian noblemen for the administration of Iran and Central Asia. The Persians had in fact a strong and highly developed sense for governing and administration after centuries of imperial tradition. Throughout the 8th and 9th centuries, the Samanid family grew in power. After decades of service to the Abbasid Caliphate, they were handsomely rewarded by Al-Ma'mun, the Caliph of the Abbasid Caliphate between 813 and 833. 4 brothers, in fact, of the Samanid family were awarded hereditary rule over several cities in Transoxiana, so the region between the rivers Amu Darya and Sir Darya, which corresponds roughly to modern-day Uzbekistan and parts of Turkmenistan, Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. This far-off region had always been difficult to subject to direct administration by the Abbasids in Baghdad. They therefore preferred to appoint here hereditary dynasties to do the majority of the ruling work, as long as these appointed emirs recognized the sovereignty of the caliph and paid tribute and taxes to Baghdad. Thus, the majority of Transoxiana came into the hands of various members of the Samanid dynasty. The next step then was to decide which brother was to be the leader of the family and consequently the leader of Transoxiana. And this turned out to be Ahmad ibn Assad, the strongest of the four brothers. His son was Nasr, who after the death of his father continued to rule over most of Transoxiana. Now, Ahmad and Nasr both still paid tribute and taxes to the Caliph in Baghdad, and thus remained a vassal state of the Abbasids. It was the brother of Nasr, or Ismail Samani, who would take the next big step in the history of the Samanids. He declared independence in 902. This basically meant that he stopped paying the taxes of his territory to the Caliph in Baghdad. He instead used this money to strengthen his position in Central Asia and to expand the authority of the Samanids. This did not mean that he completely broke with the Caliphs of Baghdad. He remained a staunch Sunnite and thus still recognized the Caliph as his nominal overlord and the spiritual leader of the Islamic world. He continued to pay his respects to the leader of the Sunni world with rich gifts and still presented himself as the loyal servant of the Caliphate. During his reign, Ismail Samani subjugated and consolidated Khorasan and Transoxiana. Afterwards, in 904, he also conquered northern Iran as far as Qasvin and Rey, although Qasvin did not remain in Samanid hands for long. Ismail Samani did not only know how to gain an empire, but also perfectly knew how to keep one. He and his successors were well versed in the art of ruling, and they were supported by a highly able and literate bureaucracy. Some members of the Samanid administration even wrote treatises on management and encyclopedias about secretarial sciences. Bookkeeping was one of the specialties of the Samanid court. The emirs also understood that the state could only benefit from a flourishing trade. Consequently, merchants were moderately taxed, and preemptive campaigns were organized in the steppes to the north of the empire. The Turkic tribes there, in fact, constantly harassed the trading routes, which were the veins of the Samanid wealth. And this resulted in unseen safety within the emirate, and consequently great economical and commercial prosperity. Ismail Samani, his successors and their magistrates were also great patrons of the arts and sciences. Secular fields such as the geography, astronomy, and medicine greatly developed under the tutelage of the Samanids. For example, the preeminent physician and scholar Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, spread his wings under the guardianship of the Samanid rulers. Also, theology flourished under the Samanids. Ismail Samani, in fact, is said to have surrounded himself with the brightest minds in Islamic law and theology. He built many madrasas, which are Islamic seminars, schools, and mosques, many of which sadly have not survived the whips and scorns of time. As devout Muslims as they were, they did not shy away from their Persian heritage, despite the pagan connections this might contain. They even relished their connections with the Sasanian past and presented themselves as the successors to the Shah and Shahs of ancient Iran. One of Ismail's successors, Mansur I, even officially adopted the title of Shah and Shah later on. Their Persian nationalism eventually led to the development of poetry in the new Persian language, in Farsi, which was based on Iranian and Arabic literary models. Ismail can thus be accredited with being the founder of the first empire which incorporated a harmonious synthesis of Islam and Iranian national identity. All this culture, all this wealth, and all this power was centered in the capital of Ismail, Bukhara. In the 10th century, the capital of this emirate became one of the foremost cultural centers of the Islamic world, even rivaling Baghdad in Iraq. It was here that the body of the founder of this empire was finally laid to rest after he passed away in 907 of the Common Era. Despite the relative short 100-year existence of Ismail's empire of the Samanid Emirate, the legacy of this dynasty still lives on. It is not only incorporated in brilliant monuments such as this one, but also present in the abstract realm of ideas. If you speak of Persian poetry, if you speak of Iranian Islamic identity, if you speak of medicine, of geography, of astronomy, then you should also speak of the Samanids.